1919. Most of you probably think about World War One ending, or maybe the booming 20s starting. When I think of 1919, I think of the 1919 World Series between the Chicago White Sox and the Cincinnati Reds, also known as the Black Sox Scandal. What happened was, several of the players on the Chicago White Sox decided they would fix the World Series, meaning as in they would lose on purpose for money. Now, why would they do such a thing? In that time and era, baseball players weren't paid that well, and the average salary for the Chicago White Sox was $4,000. And most of the players on the Chicago White Sox strongly disliked their owner, Charles Comiskey. Well, the brainchild of this whole operation was first baseman Arnold "Chick" Gandil. He first approached Joseph Sport Sullivan, a professional gambler, and mentioned to him that, it's possible that he could get a few players on the Chicago White Sox to fix the World Series. Well, Sullivan, as a gambler, got a little excited and said, I can find some money for you. So Sullivan goes to New York to meet with America's biggest gambler in that era, Arnold Rothstein. And Rothstein wasn't too excited about the whole idea because, he didn't want to be known as the guy behind the 1919 World Series. Well, according to Elliot Asanoff's book, Eight Men Out, Arnold Rothstein was the man that paid them off. Well, Arnold Rothstein decided that, okay, it's a good idea. We'll fix it. Well, Chick Gandil got a few players. First, he got Charles Swede Risberg. Risberg was shortstop, ended up becoming his right-hand man in this whole ordeal. Well, Fred McMullen overheard Risberg and Gandil talking about this whole deal and threatened to take it to the papers and tell everybody about it if he wasn't let in on the deal. So Risberg and Gandil let him in on the deal. But Fred McMullen never played a single inning in the World Series. Well, on a fix like this, they needed to get a few guys that had a little bit more control over the outcome of the game, such as pitchers. So they got two pitchers, Eddie Cicotte and Claude Lefty Williams. After those two, they got center fielder Happy Felch. Happy Felch said that he wasn't going to be in on the fix unless they got Shoeless Joe Jackson. Well, Shoeless Joe Jackson at the time was arguably one of the best players in baseball. He, according to Elliot Asanoff's book, Eight Men Out, never attended a single meeting about this whole fix. But in the end, he did accept the money, as he did confess later on. Well, another guy that they tried getting in on the fix was George Buck Weaver. George Buck Weaver went to the first team meeting. He didn't like this whole idea about fixing the World Series and getting paid for it. So he ended up not accepting a penny and played his own World Series and, went on. Well, as you know, Chicago White Sox ended up losing the series 5-3. Suspicion arises that they were fixed. The World Series was fixed because they were the overwhelming favorites to win the whole thing. According to ChicagoHistoricalSociety.com, September 1920, which is roughly a year later, Eddie Cicotte and Shoeless Joe Jackson were the first two to confess about the whole World Series being a fix. And then after them was Claude Williams, who then later confessed. A few months later, February 1921, all 8 players and the gamblers were indicted on charges for gambling and fixing the World Series. A few months after that, July 1921, grand jury was assembled and the trials began. Less than a month later, the jury came out with its verdict and said that all 8 players and gamblers were not guilty. Well, baseball's first ever and newly appointed commissioner, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, had something different to say. According to law.edu, he released a statement banishing all 8 players from baseball for life, never playing professional baseball again. Well, to this day, there are arguments about whether or not Shoeless Joe Jackson should be put in the Hall of Fame. Well, if you look at his stats in the 1919 World Series, he had the highest batting average in the whole World Series at 375. He had 12 hits, never committed a single error, and the ball came to him 30 times during the whole World Series. And he hit the World Series' only homer. People still believe that he should be put in the Hall of Fame. He has MLB's lifetime. He's the third highest batting average of all at 356. Well, the ideas have been shot down about putting him in the Hall of Fame. So right now it's all debates. So let the debating begin.